Rhetorical Quest.
Hi, I'm here to talk to you today about certain communication principles researchers have discovered and misconceptions that people have about communication. The first principle is that communication can be intentional or unintentional. Sometimes you mean to communicate a particular thing and you do communicate that. Other times you communicate something you weren't intending to communicate. The second communication principle is that it's impossible to not communicate. You're always communicating something, whether you want to or not. The third communication principle is that communication is not repeatable. Just because you communicated one way once and it worked doesn't mean it'll work the same way again. The fourth communication principle is that communication is irreversible. My dad used to tell me you can never take back a bullet. The same is true with your words. You can never take them back. The fifth communication principle is that communication has a content dimension and a relationship dimension. Certainly, the content, the information explicitly discussed, is part of your communication, but so is the feelings that you have and that your partner has when you communicate. Next, I'd like to move on to misconceptions about communication. Things people think about communication that really aren't quite right. One misconception about communication is that more communication is somehow always better. It's not. Sometimes you've said what you need to say, and saying anything more is not going to add to it. Sometimes a person is convinced of their point of view, and it's not going to get any better. And sometimes people can get confused because they've already heard what you said, and then you start to add to it, and they forget your main points. Another common misconception is that meanings are somehow in words. Now, words are a tool invented to convey meaning. But the meaning isn't in the word itself, it's in the process and in the relationship. And so sometimes we can get all caught up in, well, that's not exactly what I said, when maybe it isn't, but it's probably what you meant, or it's at least what the person who heard you understood what you said. And so the meaning is in the relationship. And the words are part of that relationship, but they're not the whole relationship. A third misconception is that successful communication would always come to some shared understanding. That's not necessarily the case. Sometimes successful communication can involve saying what you needed to say. Sometimes successful communication can come to a repaired relationship where we don't quite understand each other, but we can still be together. There's lots of Another common misconception is that communication will solve all of our problems. It won't. Sometimes the problems are not communication problems. Sometimes the problems are in the person themselves, are in the situation, and it's not that words will make this any better. So those are some basic communication principles and misconceptions, but I'd love to hear from you. If you are one of my students, I would love it if you went into the discussion from here on and discussed how you feel about these communication principles, about these misconceptions, maybe misconceptions that you still hold on to, maybe principles or misconceptions with which you disagree or agree, or ones that you know this is a misperception, but you just keep doing it. Go ahead and put that in there. If you're not one of my students and you're just watching this for your own edification, I think it would be wonderful if you would go ahead and put your opinions about this in the comments below. Thank you very much.